When you think about the iconic tech companies of the world, one of the first names that most people mention is Apple. And that's not surprising. After all, Apple is the company that has given us legendary tech products such as the Macintosh, the iPod.
It's 1,000 songs in your pocket. I'd like to introduce you to the iPod.
And the iPhone.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. Today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
In the process, the company has redefined how we live our lives and what we expect from the future. The fact that Apple has become an almost $3 trillion company from selling tech should underline its status as the world-leading tech company, right? But although the return of Steve Jobs and the resulting product innovation in the early 2000s cemented Jobs' legacy and set Apple on a path of dominance, that innovation has been sparse over the last 10 to 15 years. Sure, they have recently announced the launch of the Vision Pro, the fate of which is still yet to be seen. But in the interim, Apple is a shadow of the tech company it once was. And the most compelling reason for this is the fact that the biggest growth driver of revenue at Apple is not from product sales, which are declining, but from the services around those products. Surprised? Well, keep watching to understand how innovation has seen a decline at Apple since Steve Jobs' passing, and how services is leading revenue growth at Apple, and how the growth of services provided at Apple may have resulted in a complacency to innovate. Apple has no doubt changed the way people live their lives. Some of the historic innovations at Apple will go down in history as having defined whole new categories. The release of the iPod in 2001 revolutionized the portable music player market and was coupled in 2003 with the iTunes Store, which transformed the music industry by introducing legal digital music downloads. Then in 2007, Steve Jobs launched the iPhone. When the iPhone was launched, it marked a watershed moment in the history of technology and communication. Combining the functionalities of a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator, the iPhone pioneered the concept of a versatile, all-in-one device. Its intuitive touch interface, featuring the now famous pinch to zoom and swipe gestures, set a new standard for user experience. The sleek design and high-quality materials not only made it a coveted consumer gadget, but also influenced the entire smartphone industry's aesthetics. Beyond its technological advancements, the iPhone fundamentally changed how people interacted with information, entertainment, and each other, ushering in an era of mobile computing and shaping the trajectory of modern communication and personal technology. In 2008, when Apple launched the App Store, they revolutionized mobile applications, allowing third-party developers to create and distribute apps. The App Store transformed the way software was distributed and consumed, creating a vibrant ecosystem of third-party applications. It was then in 2010 that Steve Jobs launched his last product before he passed away the following year. Apple's first tablet, the iPad, created a new category of devices between smartphones and laptops. It wasn't then until 2015, a whole 5 years later, that the Apple Watch was launched, which marked Apple's entry into the wearable tech market, emphasizing health and fitness tracking. This was followed in the next year with Apple's AirPods that brought a new level of convenience to audio listening. And although there had been a number of other launches since then, such as various versions and upgrades of key products, and peripheral products such as their smart speaker, the HomePod, and the M1 chip technology for iMacs, it's been slim pickings to identify anything truly revolutionary. In 2023, Apple did announce what could be a transformational new product, the Vision Pro. The AR/VR headset opens the door to the metaverse. All those domains, AR, VR, and the metaverse, have struggled with mass adoption, and at a $3,500 price tag, that's not an easy product to sell to the masses. It'll be interesting to see how that clicks with mass-scale consumers when it is launched to the public on the 2nd of February 2024. Since its launch in 2007, Apple has relied on iPhone sales for its stellar growth. As mass mobile computing adoption accelerated through the 2000s and for the last decade, Apple iPhones were flying off the shelves. Since that launch by Jobs, there have been numerous iterations of the iconic smartphone to date, and we're already on the iPhone 15 by the start of 2024. But these iterations have all been incremental in nature, building on the success of the initial product. At this point, the iPhone is responsible for well over $1.5 trillion in revenue for Apple, and that too with high margins. That's more than 1 billion in unit sales. But sales of devices has slowed and can be seen to be plateauing. There are many alternative providers on the market now, and many have a stronger lead into innovation. Apple's market share in smartphones is declining. But if you look at Apple's revenues from iPhones, it's been holding steady. The reason for this is Apple has realized the need to increase prices more aggressively than it ever has in the past. It's the equivalent of plastering a problem in the hope of finding a solution. But Tim Cook knows that he cannot continue to rely on iPhones for future growth. What was at first a new nascent market is now saturated. For the last few years, Apple has needed to look elsewhere to continue to deliver revenue growth. Enter Apple services. And what are services at Apple? Well, it's all non-product sales. Think of it as the revenue Apple earns through providing everything else that allows you to operate your devices fully and to consume content and media that Apple develops itself or with third parties. That is services at Apple. It is the Apple universe, the ecosystem of Apple. It's Apple's mechanism to keep you in Apple world so that you become entrenched and find it difficult to leave the house of Apple. The way Apple has built this means Apple promotes a subscription-based model for various services, such as Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, and iCloud storage. And that's important for Apple, like it is for all tech companies, because the holy grail of business is recurring revenues. Recurring revenues mean you don't need to start each year with zero in revenues. Instead, you start each year building on revenues from existing loyal customers. And this has a compounding effect, as year on year, you are building on revenues in an exponential manner. The subscriptions people have to Apple services provide a recurring revenue stream, and Apple's ecosystem makes it convenient for users to subscribe to and manage multiple services under one account. Services like iCloud, Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, and more are all designed to enhance the user experience and encourage consumers to stay within the Apple ecosystem. The services component of Apple's business has continued to grow over the last 10 years. Apple services revenue in 2023 was $85 billion from total revenues in 2023 of $383 billion. That's 22% of revenues coming from services. Compare that with 2018, when services revenue as a percentage of total revenues was only 15%. And if you look at the growth of services revenues compared to other parts of Apple, the difference is marked. Since 2018, services revenue has grown at a 16.5% compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, outpacing Apple's 7.6% growth rate, as well as the iPhone's 4.0% CAGR over the same period. Whilst the growth of services is great for Apple's financials and has definitely allowed Apple to dominate the corporate world and made Wall Street happy over the years, it has and is continuing to change the kind of company Apple is becoming. The mix of revenues at Apple illustrate the kind of company it is becoming, and increasingly, it is less and less a tech company and more of a services company. And against a backdrop of muted new product releases, and here I'm talking about actual new products as opposed to updates of existing products, that is a big problem. Building a tech ecosystem and charging for the services you provide has served Apple well financially so far, but that should always be secondary to innovating new products. After all, if you cannot provide innovation, people will just go elsewhere, no matter what the friction is to move because of the ecosystem you have created. As such, Apple is at the crossroads that will shape what the business looks like for the next 10 to 20 years. Apple has innovated with the Vision Pro, but at a price of $3,500, that's hardly a mass market consumer product for now. And focusing on a metaverse that has struggled to take off, just ask Meta, it's not certain to be a slam dunk hit of a product. The success of the Vision Pro will very much depend on the ecosystem Apple is able to build around it, which Apple has proven to be able to do around the iPod and the iPhone. Meanwhile, whilst Apple is struggling with innovation and relying on services, its competitors are catching up with real innovation. Microsoft is hot on Apple's trail. On the 11th of January 2024, Microsoft briefly overtook Apple as the world's most valuable company. You can be sure that Satya Nadella will ensure that lead is sustained and grown further, which could leave Apple far behind very quickly indeed. Microsoft has made giant strides in the fields of cloud gaming through its recent acquisition of Activision Blizzard, and AI through its investment in OpenAI. Perhaps the success of its arch-enemy Microsoft will give Apple the wake-up call it needs to return to its innovative roots and pave the way for what the average consumer will want in the future. And that innovation needs to tie into consumers' everyday use cases. So it'll be interesting to see feedback on the Vision Pro. To watch my video on how Apple makes money from you, click the link above or see the video in the description box below. Thanks for watching.